I've been spending a lot of our like studio days and talking about like squats, right? We've been talking about squats and lower body exercises a lot. And today I want to switch gears and I want to talk about upper body exercises, because upper body is super important too. Legs are important, but upper body is important too. What I kind of want to do is go through each of the major muscle groups of the upper body and show a couple of exercises that you can do to target that muscle group and train it and develop it and get it stronger. So there are a couple of like key principles that you can kind of keep in mind when it comes to building your exercise routine if you're trying to like build muscle. So if you want to get like a nice, like well-rounded upper body training, right? You want to make sure that you're aware of and you keep in mind your major muscle groups. So that's what we're going to go through today. So first off, I like to start with the biggest muscles and then we work our way down to the smallest muscles. And part of that is because the biggest muscles are going to take more energy. So you want to kind of target them at the beginning of your workout. But also a lot of the exercises that target the bigger muscles also use the smaller muscles for assistance, right? So for example, I usually will start an upper body workout either targeting the pecs or targeting the lats, because those are the two biggest muscles in our upper body area, right? When it comes to like associated with our arms and stuff. So a lot of times I'll focus on chest or the lats. And for chest work, really classic exercise is the chest press, which you can do with dumbbells or you can do with a barbell, that we call it a barbell, bench press. And with a chest press or a bench press, the pecs are the prime movers. That's like what we're trying to primarily target, but you also get a lot of help from your triceps and your anterior deltoids, okay? Push-ups are another good one for that. So yeah, push-ups, bench press, chest press, it's all this motion, right? And so a lot of it is like, chest work or pec work, but you also get assistance from your anterior deltoids and your triceps. So that's what I'm gonna show you now, is how to do chest presses. They work, but they are old and they're beat up. These are some like old-fashioned like aerobics weights, and we're gonna use these for the chest press. Oh yay, I work. Okay, it works. Okay, so let's first talk about how to position yourself on a bench whenever you're doing anything on the bench, whether you're doing chest presses, chest flies, lat pullovers, skull crushers or tricep extensions. Whenever you are laying flat on the bench, there's a couple of things you want to keep in mind, okay? So first, you want to sit down on the bench, feet on either side, and when you lay down on the bench, you want to plant your feet on the ground, either through your heels. Some people like to have the balls of their feet there, but you want some active engagement, kind of like, squeeze your butt and push your feet down on the ground, kind of like you're doing a bridge, but don't let your hips come off the ground. And then you also want to push your shoulder blades or your shoulders into the bench as well. So you've got nice solid 1, 2, 3 points of contact from like your body to the bench or to the ground to stabilize. So this is like our, bench position for whether you're doing chest presses, chest flies, pullovers, and whatnot. You can notice that I have what seems like a big arch, and really it's because my booty's so big, but just everybody has kind of a different arch. You might not necessarily have a whole lot of space underneath your back here, depending on your flexibility, depending on your anatomy. But essentially what we really want to try to do is push those feet into the ground, squeeze the butt, push the shoulders into the ground, and create a stable base. So that's a bench base, and that's how you should be whenever you're doing any of these bench exercises where you're like laying down and facing up. And so if you were going to do some chest presses for the pecs, you're going to come down into that reclined bench position, get your nice solid base, and we start at the top with the hands right above the shoulders. And you want to think about like punching the ceiling, right? And to keep your pecs engaged, you want to think about pushing your chest up towards the ceiling. That's going to allow you to get maximum squeeze and engagement at the top. So for the bottom of the exercise, you're going to bend your elbows and bring the weights down to your sides as you continue to push your chest up towards the ceiling, and then push back up to the top, stacking your hands right over your shoulders. So down at the bottom, making sure that the weight stays right above your elbows here, and then pushing to the top. So it's the same movement that you would have like if you were doing bench press, except that you are squeezing the weights towards each other at the top, and that's what allows you to get even more pec engagement on this exercise than you would get on a barbell bench press. And then to come back up. And a couple of things you want to keep in mind when you're doing this. You want to aim for your elbows to make like an A shape, A shape through your body rather than a T shape. A T shape is going to take a lot of the work out of your pecs and put it more on your shoulders. So when you're doing this exercise, if you feel like your shoulders are working harder than anything, or if you feel any shoulder pain, it might be because you're doing your chest presses here instead of here. So A shape. And you also want to think about squeezing your back at the bottom of the movement, kind of like you're doing a row, like pulling the weights towards you. And then at the top, you're squeezing them together like that, okay? So your prime movers here are gonna be your pecs, of course, but you may also feel it in your shoulders. You can feel some work in your shoulders and in your triceps as well. So those are like the main muscle groups that the chest presses hit. All right, so let's go over another exercise for the chest that I really, really like. It's dumbbell chest flies. And you can do this with a lot of different equipment, but we'll show with the dumbbells or the hand weights. So it's another exercise. We're targeting the pecs. The pecs' job specifically is to like bring your arms in towards the center of the line of your body or shrug your shoulders forward. So we're gonna try to create that movement in isolation by pulling our arms in. And my mom was a group fitness instructor during the 90s, and she used to say, pretend like you're squeezing a beach ball, which I think is a really good way to think about how to do the chest flies correctly. So let's go over our flies. Okay, so with the chest flies, you're gonna be in the same position, laying down on the bench with face up. And the arm movement here is very similar starting point as the chest presses, but you're gonna have your palms facing each other, okay? So rather than the thumbs towards each other, you're gonna have like your palms facing each other. And the movement is you're gonna open your arms up like wings, right? Opening your arms up, pushing your chest up towards the ceiling, and then bringing the weights right back over your shoulders again. So this is the movement. And notice that I'm bending my elbows a little bit. The heavier you go with these weights, the heavier you go in the weights with this movement, the more you're gonna have to get a bend in those elbows, okay? Just because the more that I'll show from the side, the more that you like open up your arms, the more tension that's gonna put on your elbow joint. So feel free to start with the arms more of a bend like this. And so when you're doing the movement, you're bending your elbows to keep your fists over your elbows. Over time, if you wanna challenge yourself a little bit more with this exercise and get more of a stretch reflex in the biceps, you can perform the exercise with the elbows more straight, and then it's here. So that's one way that you can add a variation to this exercise. So from the top, it kind of would look like this. So less of a bend in the elbows here, but that is going to put more strain on the elbow. So that's something you want to work towards opening up over time. So I'm going to show, with the elbows more bent, what it looks like on the bench. Okay. So I'm going to get my nice solid base, drive my feet into the ground, squeeze my butt, push my shoulders down into the bench, and I'm going to push my chest up towards the ceiling. I'm starting with my hands right above my shoulders with my fingers facing each other, my palms facing each other. And then I'm going to open up, bending my elbows, keeping my chest pushed up towards the ceiling, come down as far as my flexibility allows, and then I'm going to squeeze my chest to come back to the center. Squeezing my back on the way down, squeezing my lats specifically to keep my back nice and solid. And then if you want to do more of with your arms open, that's going to make it a lot harder because you've got a longer lever now. So that's one way that you can progress this exercise without necessarily adding more weight. Just open up your arms a little bit more, straighten out the elbow. Just make sure that you are squeezing your back on the way down to keep your base stable. And then There we go. Let's talk about the other big muscle group in the upper body, which is the lats. Like I said, a lot of times we'll start an upper body workout with something that targets the pecs, or sometimes that targets the lats, because one, there's a big muscle group, and also little muscle groups tend to help out with that. If you work out your little muscle groups before you tackle your big muscle groups, one of the things that you put yourself in danger of is, if you fatigue your triceps, for instance. If you fatigue your triceps before you do bench press or before you do chest press, then you're going to sacrifice how much weight you can do and how much, you can fatigue your pecs, because one of the helping muscles is already fatigued. Do you see what I mean? So that's one of the reasons why you want to kind of tackle your bigger muscles first, your more compound exercises, the exercises that involve like multiple joints in action at the same time. You typically want to do those first. Thank you for that follow. Okay, so let's talk about lats. Classic exercise for the lats is lat rows. And rows are just when you're pulling something towards your body, and that can be pulling something towards your body from here, from here, from here. Generally speaking, to get the lats more engaged, you want to get in, the lats are basically that muscle. The lats are the muscle that runs like from underneath your armpits into like your mid-back area. And they activate most the more that you're like squeezing your armpits. So you're gonna kind of like have that sort of action going on. So the lower your elbows are, you're gonna get more engagement in those lats. You can get lat work out, with your elbows out wider, but the higher that you go, the more you're gonna be putting that work in your posterior deltoid, which is your, back of your shoulder here, and your traps, which is that muscle that runs like a diamond in your upper body. So if we specifically want to work on the lats, we want to keep those rows low. If we want to work on the lats, we want to keep the rows low. So elbows close to the body. Think about elbow brushing the ribs, okay? So we're going to pull towards the body with some resistance. So one of my favorite exercises is our bench row. So for the bench row, you put one knee on the bench and your other foot is out, and then the same side hand is going to come down onto the bench, and now it's kind of like you're in an all fours position on the bench, just on one side. And then with your free hand, you're going to grab your weight, and then you're going to get into a position with a nice flat back, and you're pushing actively away from the bench. We don't want to sink into that bottom shoulder. We're pushing actively away. If that hurts your wrist, you can come up onto your fist like this, okay? And for the row exercise, we're going to bend our elbow, bring it all the way up, but pinch our arm in towards our body like we're squeezing our armpit, and then come back down. So squeeze your armpit, weight stops moving once the elbow stops moving, okay? We don't want to keep going like this. Now that's a tricep extension. We want the elbow to go up, squeeze the armpit, and then come back down. And the whole time we're keeping our core braced and try to keep that flat back. Up and down is one repetition, but remember, if you do an exercise to one side, you got to do it to the other side as well. So I'm going to turn around. Now I have my opposite side knee, opposite side hand, starting in that position with a nice flat back, kind of like an all fours position. Squeeze my armpit to bring the elbow up, and then come back down. Okay, so that's our single arm bench row for the lats. So when I am teaching a new client, and I'm teaching them specifically in resistance training, I usually will start them, if they're just using like hand weights or dumbbells, I'll start them with the single arm row on the bench, just like I showed you. But one of my favorite, more advanced variations of the lat row is the standing lat row. For the standing lat row, you have to have really good hip hinge or deadlift form, okay? This is one of those exercises that you need to learn the hip hinge and how to perform it correctly and safely first in order to be able to hold the position, because basically you need to be in a kind of the bottom of a Romanian deadlift position in order to do this exercise correctly, okay? What we want to do is put our torso in a position where we're having to resist gravity from that movement right here. So you have to have that hip hinge down if you want to do this exercise correctly and safely. Let me turn it this way. So if you haven't learned how to Romanian deadlift yet, you probably shouldn't do this exercise. Romanian deadlift is this. That's the exercise. It's mainly an exercise for your glutes and your hamstrings, and it's a deadlift basically, but you're not going all the way to the ground, and you're stopping like right below your knees. So you want to put your body in a position where your hands, when you're relaxed, your hands are just kind of like center line of your body, and your torso doesn't necessarily need to be completely parallel to the ground, but in more of a bent over position. And then from here, you're going to squeeze your armpits to draw your elbows up and squeeze your back, and then bring it back down. So you're squeezing your lats, that muscle that runs in your mid-back. And up and down is 1 repetition. Remember, trying to keep your elbows in close for this. Hips are back. And if you have back pain while you're doing this exercise, if you're feeling it in your lower back, you may want to check your form, because you may be too far forward trying to do this. The further forward the weight is away from the center line of your body, the more strain that's going to put on your back. So you want the weight to stay and move in more or less a straight line in that kind of like center line right above your shoelaces. In that area, that's where the weight should stay. But even if your form is good, you may not necessarily have the core strength to be able to sustain this exercise. So if you feel back pain and your form looks okay, you may need to work on that core strength and your back strength. So it might be better to switch to doing rows with a band if you want to do 2 arms at the same time, or on a cable machine, or do the single arm lat row on the bench. Okay, so now we've hit 2 of the big muscle groups that also use other like little muscles. Now let's talk about some exercises that we can do to isolate into those muscle groups that we used before. So triceps, for example. If I'm going to do a triceps exercise, one of my favorites is the tricep kickback. Okay, so let's talk about the tricep kickbacks. Tricep kickbacks are a great exercise for the triceps, which are in the back of your arms here. Their job is elbow extension, okay? So they help with chest presses or bench press, but if you want to work them in isolation, this is a great exercise for that. Okay, so the way that you get into this exercise is similar to the bench row. It's very similar setup. So you have one knee on the bench, same side hand on the bench, starting with a flat back, okay? And then you're actually going to start at the top of your row. But for this exercise, you're keeping your elbow pinned to your side, and you're not going to move the elbow at all. The movement is you're just going to extend your arm back and then bring your hand back here. So just flexing the tricep to extend the elbow and then bringing the weight back to the starting position. So out and in is 1 repetition to one side. Okay, so one thing that you want to avoid, I see a lot of people do this, is they turn this into a pendulum, okay? We want this movement to be completely controlled, so stop all movement at the bottom. And then also, you do not need to go all the way here. See, I see a lot of people doing this like pendulum swing. That is not really doing your triceps much good. It's better to just stop where the weight is neutrally hanging towards the floor, stop all movement, and then extend up and then come back, okay? So I don't want to see any of this shit. Okay, that's not doing you any good, all right? And again, if we do to one side, we have to do the other. Okay, so tricep extension starts just like a row. And if you're doing it right, you will feel the work here in your triceps. So let's talk about bicep curls, or exercises for the biceps. Biceps are helper muscles and a lot of lats exercises, actually. So like for lat rows and lat pull downs, we're pulling in, and the bicep is responsible for elbow flexion. Triceps, elbow extension, biceps, elbow flexion. And so, if you're doing like a pull day or a back day, you'll see back and biceps go together a lot because the biceps kind of have to help with a lot of pulling exercises. So if you want to work on your biceps, what you want to do is create resistance on that elbow flexion. So this is the movement we want to create some tension for the biceps for. So good old classic bicep curls. So for like basic bicep curls, you're going to be standing. You can also do them seated, but I find standing a little bit more comfortable. And you have the palms facing forward, elbows pinned to your side. You want your lats engaged, like you're squeezing your armpits. Your chest is pushed forward, shoulders back, and we're curling the weight up and stopping once the elbow stops bending, okay? And then we come back down with control. So elbow comes up, elbows bend, or sorry, the weight comes up, the elbows bend, and then we lower down with control. What I see a lot of people do is they'll like keep bringing the elbows up. That's an exaggeration, but I'll see this a lot. Ideally, we want the elbows to stay fixed to the sides. As soon as they stop bending, the weight stops moving, okay? So up and back down is 1 repetition. You can do these alternating if you want to just focus on one side at a time. You've got your alternating bicep curls like this. And a lot of people like to do hammer curls. Hammer curls are just like regular bicep curls. You just have the thumbs coming facing up as you bend the elbow. So it comes up like this. And from the side, it looks like this. Hope you guys enjoyed the upper body exercises today. There's a lot more, but that's all I have time to go over today. So we at least covered like the chest, the lats, the triceps, and the biceps. I think next time we'll go over shoulders because there's a lot of different ways to work the shoulders, different back exercises as well. And then of course, upper body, I consider the core as part of the upper body, but you can train the core, you know, with lower body days as well, or just have a separate core day. But yeah, we'll do some more arms exercises next time.